Assalamu alaikum, you're watching Views and News and I'm Faisal Rahman live from our Islamabad studios. Today we'll be talking about the current economic situation of Pakistan and especially in the perspective of the ongoing IMF talks. Now the Finance Minister, Mr. Miftah Ismail Saab, says that we are very optimistic about reaching a deal with the IMF very soon, and that is definitely going to put some pressure on dollar, where we will see the price of the dollar, which is hovering around 215, 213 in the black market and open market, well over 210, should come down to a certain limit. And obviously that is going to really help Pakistan in certain areas. At the same time, again, the conditionalities which are attached with the IMF deal, again, we have seen that 47% increase in the electricity prices, 45% increase in the natural gas bills. You're talking about the petroleum prices. They are hovering well over around 250. Look at where the diesel is. Now a certain levy has also been included. So now that is also going to put a lot of pressure as far as inflation is concerned. When you talk about taxing the rich and giving relief to the poor, or targeted subsidy, that is again a demand, and the targeted subsidy that we are giving again is something which the IMF is not very happy with. Now to talk about this, let me quickly introduce you to our panelists. In our studio we have with us Faheem Sardar Saab, needs no introduction. He's a senior policy specialist. Thank you very much, sir, for your time. And on the telephone we'll be talking to Zishan Merchant Saab, former president of KTBA and also a senior economist. And on Skype we have with us Dr. Khaqan Najeeb Saab, former advisor, Ministry of Finance, and also was a part of the dealing when they were talking to the IMF. So thank you very much for your time as well. Faheem Sardar Saab, let me start off from you, sir. Talks are still underway with the IMF to revive the bailout program. Where are we stuck at the moment? I mean, what's the current situation? What's the current deal that is going on, and now what else do these people from the IMF want from Pakistan?
I think it's more a question of finalizing the whole agreement. I think it's more a question of dotting the I's and crossing the T's, because the government has worked very hard to come this far to make sure that the IMF deal is done in a way that is acceptable to IMF but also acceptable to the country. Pakistan is facing considerable pressure due to the rise in oil prices. Yeah. But at the same time, Pakistan has to deal with this whole situation by itself, with the help of IMF, which Pakistan is trying to seek. This whole situation might become a little more conducive. Mm-hmm. Having said that, your question was, where is this? At what point is this whole situation right now? Well, I think it's at the end of the whole situation, in my opinion, because I'm pretty sure that this agreement is going to come through. The government has been pushing very hard, and the government has been flexible to a certain to a helpful degree, but the government has also had to bear a lot of brunt because of the situation. You've got the high oil prices, I'm repeating that, but that is something which has to be borne by us. Unfortunately, we're all paying for it. I think IMF is in a position right now to say yes. That's my assessment, and I think the government is willing to work with the IMF, and the IMF is willing to work with the government. It will take, I think, some time more, because certain...
Perhaps a week, 10 days maybe?
I think, yeah, around about a week, because I think there's certain more agreements and caveats that need to be finalized. Caveats will be mostly restrictive caveats, restrictive covenants that need to be finalized, or let's say reassured by Pakistan. Okay, fine, we agree to this. You mentioned the targeted subsidies. I think if Pakistan had the spare liquidity, and if Pakistan can generate the spare liquidity, I don't think IMF will have that much of a problem with it.
Do we have that kind of a fiscal space?
I think we're developing it through the increased taxation results that we're getting, because Pakistan has had a very robust, I think it's more than 27%, the taxation increase that Pakistan has been able to generate from its existing taxpayers, and slightly more
Now, there are two areas. Perhaps one is all about increasing the tax base, which hasn't increased as such. When you talk about the tax to GDP ratio, it's not where they should have been. Number three is, again, when you talk about putting more taxes on those people who already under the burden of tax, that is like snatching away the purchasing power, basically, and that is what has happened. And look at the current inflation. I mean, put them all together, and I would say that is not something very, very good for the
absolutely, it's a slightly different
final
situation.
consumer.
However, the taxation increase in Pakistan has come about by some new taxpayers, but mostly from transactional tax, mostly from tax on imports and other aspects. The bottom line is that the government is trying to get this thing under wraps very quickly, and I think IMF and the government are converging to a point. And perhaps I think in the next 7 to, as you said, 10 days, I think we can expect something.
So most likely during this month of June.
June, I think so, yeah.
Let's see, well, let's hope so as well. Now, coming to you, Dr. Khaqan Najeeb Sahab, obviously you've been a part of the IMF deals and you understand the details and the nitty-gritties, basically, how to move forward. Now, talking about certain actions that the government has taken or will further take in the future, perhaps those are the decisions which are going to affect them politically, one. And secondly, sir, when you talk about the public and the current situation because of the hike in inflation, increase in the petroleum prices, you talk about increase in the tariffs, and so much more that has been going on. Whenever you put this question to any layman, I mean, they would say that, well, the government, just because of the IMF, is putting us under a lot of pressure. Now, this is the general statement that I end up hearing from anyone, starting from somebody from the lower middle income group to middle income group, even to the person, who's making maybe 500,000 rupees a month or something like that. Everybody has squeezed to a limit where they believe that let's hope things do get better. But obviously, when you talk about the money, generating the fiscal space, looking after the numbers, at the end of the day, sir, your final consumer pays the price. Now, your take, sir, I mean, what else should we expect from the IMF regarding the bailout package? And when we say that obviously Pakistan has done whatever they wanted to, those were the conditionalities attached with the deal. What else should we expect now in the coming days and perhaps in the coming weeks?
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Always a pleasure to be with you on PTV World. IMF is the least understood of any deals Pakistan makes. The reason I say that is that, let's say there is a misnomer that somehow IMF determines the energy prices in Pakistan. IMF has actually nothing to do with energy pricing in Pakistan. We have just had an energy price rise of 7 rupees 92 pesos. The IMF folks probably didn't even know about it. There was a discourse petition over the last several months, which was taken to NEPRA, that we should change the price. NEPRA had a hearing and they came up with a new price of 792. When it was published on the NEPRA website, the guy sitting in Washington went onto that website and said, oh, there is a new NEPRA determination, so we should have a discussion with the government, what the government wants to do. The reason I put this to you is that so many misnomers create this impact on any government, political government, whether that was the previous one or the current one, to move ahead and take the steps that are necessary to be part of an IMF program. If Pakistan had been continuously part of this program, since February the program has been halted. Then obviously, circumstances overtook the country with a new government taking, putting their feet on the ground, which takes another bit of time. Funds were delayed, which were to come from UAE, Qatar, China, multilaterals, ADB, World Bank, they're all holding their money. Just look at the impact that the country has had to take because of the delay that we have done in signing this program with the IMF. And that has to do a lot with all the misnomers that we create about the fund. So where we stand today, very clearly, we have to finalize the contours of the budget with them. I think the budget that was presented, the government themselves thought that that was initial kind of a thing that they had laid down. They were still working. New government, one gives a bit of leeway to them. So they were working through them. These are kind of a provision numbers. I think in the coming days they worked those numbers. The FBR target, for example, I wrote a budget and I thought it was 7,800 billion. Initially, the government proposed 7,000. Now they've gone to mid 7,000s. That's good. So we've moved there. We've moved on the petroleum prices. We still have to move on the electricity. We still have to move on the gas. And my suggestion to government has been that they should do it in a manner which does not put the immediate burden on the consumers, and it can be done in a staggered manner. Then there are other contours of expenditure that we have to fix with the IMF. And some new certain taxes have to come when we talk about whether it's 7,450 as the target for the fund or what I've written as 7,800. And those should fall on the rich. I think that's where we stand. And I don't think it's a matter of 10 to 12 days. I think it's a matter of very, very few days. And the reason I say that is that Pakistan's liquidity crunch in the interbank market is very, very tight, and we are uncomfortable on that. The fund would realize that and move swiftly.
Now another point, sir, there was this story in the newspaper that the IMF also wanted us to, show some sort of a budget surplus, and that was somewhat around 162 billion rupees, if I'm not wrong. What's that story, sir?
So there are a couple of things. One, you have the fiscal deficit. So fiscal deficit is the overall deficit of the country. We get the provincial surplus, and then we get the overall deficit which the federation creates, and then you get this kind of a fiscal deficit. But then there is something called what they're talking about is the primary surplus. Primary surplus means that taking out the interest payments, which are about 4,000 billion rupees this year. So you take out the 4,000 billion, to be exact, I think the number is 3953 billion. So if you take out 3953 from the fiscal deficit, your primary deficit, barring the interest payments, should be in surplus or should be in balance. That's what they're talking about.
All right. Now, another very interesting aspect, Faheem Sahab, is that obviously when the finance minister says that we are expecting something very positive from the IMF, as also mentioned by Khaqan Najeeb Sahab, that the deal is almost finalized, and whenever there's a change, so they review it. Obviously, this is how it is. Even if a bank is giving you a certain amount of money, and you're talking about billions of dollars here, so they also need to understand whether you will be able to pay back, or this is the mechanism you need to adopt in order to follow this whole program. Now, one important factor, sir, when we hear that government's priority, they say that, these three words: providing relief to the poor, taxing rich, expanding tax base. Now, since we have talked about this expansion of tax base, taxing rich, like for example, when you talk about the remittances, let's say over $30 billion, let's put it this way, 32, this is what the claim is, but let's say $30 billion. So most of that money either is consumed, consumption based, or most of it goes in the real estate business, because that's one side that is really taking off. Look at the prices of properties and throughout Pakistan, it's on a rise. Now, sir, when you will tax, let's say, I'm not exactly sure, but it is believed that 17% tax is going to be, on sale and purchase or something. Even if it is not 17%, less than that, sir, that is going to put a lot of pressure on the economic activity and the kind of money that is generated through those transactions. Obviously, they said, we will tax the rich. Now, putting certain amount of an additional tax on the sale and purchase of the property, for that matter, so what sort of an effect it is going to have on the overall economy?
Any kind of tax creates a band. It creates a band above the cost, above the transactional value. So what that does is it basically creates less room for another transaction to happen. So you see, transactions, when an economy is made up of transactions. The more transactions there are going to be, technically speaking, the bigger the economy is.
Absolutely.
Now, so at the moment we have certain things like higher taxes or bad IT or anything like that, your transactions slow down. There's a purpose to to basically understanding that this is not.
And money doesn't remain in circulation, it's stuck as well.
It gets stuck, and we have to understand that even technology is very important to back up this speed, the velocity of an economy. Right now, if 17% sales tax is now levied on every kind of real estate transaction, we're going to have a broader band, value band.
And what is that supposed to mean for himself?
That basically means that there's going to be less room for another transaction to come into the same place, because when somebody's buying, somebody's selling. Now, if it's going to be expensive for both are going to sort of become very choosy, very picky about which transactions they're going to go for. If, for example, if we use our phones, very freely because it's very cheap, as it used to be, it started to get more expensive because of the taxes, not because of the telco industry. Suddenly people started to become a little hesitant in calling, and they're just giving each other missed calls. So that's a very basic description of what happens.
And at the same time, if you go on the roads now, you will see less traffic. That is again a signal that people are not, in fact, consuming fuel to that level they used to.
They're trying to conserve it.
Yes.
They're trying to be more careful. They're being more choosy. So if any kind of tax, any kind of levy, any kind of duty is put upon a transaction, any kind of transaction, it basically slows it down. That's why when we reduce the transactions or levies or duties on anything, it speeds things up.
Now, Faheem Saab, markets will be closed at 9 o'clock. Sindh, Karachi, and you know Karachi, in fact, the business starts after 9 p.m.
Yeah.
So restaurants will remain open till 11. These wedding halls, they will remain open at 10, till 10, and markets will be closed. So that is going to put a lot of pressure on the retail sector.
Yes, the retail sector will, to be honest, come under more pressure, because this is just an added thing. Because right now the retail sector has been just came out of COVID. It just came out of a very extended COVID period in which the retail sector had to adjust itself completely. Now all of a sudden you have more taxes, you have higher costs, you have demand, but that demand is not coming into the market, because now everybody's being very choosy, very careful about where they spend their money, because they can't just spend as freely as they were earlier. So the slowdown of an economy, which is basically summed by one word, velocity, the velocity of the economy will slow down. That needs to be taken care of very, very gently. You see, in economics, you're not supposed to have abrupt decisions. You're supposed to do things very gently, and 4 or 5 things are done simultaneously in a very coordinated, gentle manner. That basically turns the ship, that basically guides the ship in the right direction. In Pakistan, we have unfortunately seen it, I have at least observed so many times in the past 25 years, that there are many times abrupt decisions. And the economy has to absorb that shock.
Abrupt and not well thought out decisions.
Yes, I mean that can be said on many instances. Right now, the government is trying very hard against very difficult, certain circumstances. They're trying to make the best of it. I mean, people keep talking about the Russian oil. It's not that easy to just buy Russian oil, but the day we get it, we'll be happy. But up till then, we have to understand that there is an international transactional system. We have to follow the rules. If India is doing something, India is doing it with exemptions. We have to understand that, and perhaps we have to follow the same.
The Americans even say that they have got a strategic relationship with the Russians, and they have been so close for such a long time that they can't abruptly just switch and take another position.
Politics. That's politics.
That is what because at the end of the day, sir, these macro environmental factors matter.
They matter, and Pakistan has to navigate. The word is navigate. We have to navigate through all these slightly difficult times. The war, the topic is not the war in Russia or in Ukraine, sorry, but there is a huge ripple effect, as we can clearly see, because oil, gas, food, and many other things and even precious metals are now being affected by this whole.
So food, because of your fertilizer production in Russia, your wheat production, almost 30% in Russia and Ukraine, and then those containers, they're still stuck. And because of the war, they could not even harvest. So maybe in another 6 to 8 months, we will see that kind of a pressure. And especially Pakistan, though we claim that we are an agro-based country, but sir, at the end of the day, if you're importing 3 million tons of wheat, you're importing edible oil worth around $5 billion. And I mean, we can pulses, 80% of your pulses are being imported.
Yep.
Very few people know that. I always thought that maybe we are self-sufficient. No, sir, we're not. And you keep on, cotton for that matter.
That's the whole point. I mean, we need to reconfigure ourselves even more. I mean, we did a pretty good job in COVID. I think we, as a nation, we came together. We did a pretty good job. We have to support the government in going forward, but the government also needs to obviously move very, very fast because the times are such.
Absolutely.
We have external pressures building. We have a domestic. The good thing about the domestic thing is we've got a big economy. We've got a big set of people, a large number of consumers, which basically helps prop up businesses. This is something we take very lightly. We shouldn't. And we don't speak of it as an asset. We typically bring it up as a liability. For why I'm lost for words. But the point is we need to navigate very quickly, but in a very agile way, because the solutions are there. We just need to, the Ukraine thing is going to die down at some point, but I think we need to use this opportunity to perhaps reconfigure.
Because this is going to have a global effect. It is not going to only affect Pakistan.
Obviously.
So one has to be ready before taking any decision. Now, Khaqan Sahab, another important factor. When we talk about, let's say, the current economic situation or the challenges that are being faced by Pakistan, one important factor is the current political situation as well, sir. Obviously, as a foreign investor, when you look at Pakistan, so, you'll think twice. And then you'll see, okay, well, I can invest in Bangladesh, in certain industries, like many Pakistani industries have done, or perhaps Sri Lanka. A lot of people now looking towards Turkey for that matter. My point is, sir, that forget about the investors looking at Pakistan from outside Pakistan. What about those who are still confused? These are the investors which are Pakistan based. And honestly speaking, whomever I've spoken to, whether somebody from the chamber or any other area, and they're all reluctant. That wait and see strategy is being adopted. Let's see what happens. Let's see how IMF deals with Pakistan. Let's wait and see what sort of inflation number do we get to see. This is what has been going on. So this confidence that has been shattered over some time, and the current government, though they are in place, and whether they stay for another 1.5 years or early elections are called or whatever, because this is what the confusion is all about. How important is this current political instability as far as the economic situation is concerned, sir?
So that's why, that's a very good question. And that's why I started the conversation by saying that the IMF uncertainty should have been removed many months ago. The sooner you remove the IMF uncertainty, you have one thing on the side at least. And then you can worry about the other uncertainties. On the political front, I think the government's been very cautious in saying what the political and what the economic reality is in the country. So let me just comment on the economic reality. I think they've been very cautious to tell us that, we have reserves which are not good to even cover a month and 10 days of our imports. The State Bank just a minute ago has sent a communique in the market to give confidence that we have reserves to cover the imports. We have put in $4.3 billion of imports that have come through in the last few days of this month. So, it's that kind of uncertainty that has been created. Part of it is political driven, but part of it is also economic driven. I mean, let me put a figure to you. The LNG, which was long-term contracts for Pakistan stand at about $13, is costing $40 currently. So just look at the quantum of money that we need to now pay to import that kind of LNG.
More. Yeah.
Right. So and going on, this uncertainty of the IMF, and then the global prices going to that kind of level. has created a lot of disruptions in the market. So the sooner we get over them, but one way to go through them is also to, when people talk about that at 9 we don't want to close our shops, or we don't want to close them at 6, which the government, I mean, I am really thinking that the government's narrative setting should have been much harsher with the people. They should tell them that Pakistan, to go unscathed and not become Sri Lanka, needs everyone to put their hearts and minds together. 1 hour of load shedding in the whole country, 1 hour. Let's say we were to shut the country down altogether for 1 hour, saves $163 million a month. That's the kind of bill the government or the country is footing. So, I mean, it's not time, it's time that people should come forward. And here I blame the government in a sense that they've been cautious and kind to the people. Had they come out and said, tighten your belts, I think the people would have, been more of a realization. Then on the taxation side, I'll come to the investment side also. I mean, retail, wholesale, real estate. Agriculture is a provincial subject, I'll let it be. But these three, I mean, the tax potential there is immense. And even now, you buy a piece of property in E7 for 5 crores today, and I keep giving this example over and over again. After 4 years, you go and sell it for 10 crores, you take home 5 crores of profit, and you pay nothing. You pay zero tax. Where is this fair in the world? And there is a salaried person earning 100,000, 200,000, 300,000 monthly and paying up. So, these are the discrepancies. It's our policy omissions that this budget needs to...
I agree with you on those. Obviously, when you talk about wholesale or retail for that matter, sir, only 1% tax is being paid by these two major, I would say areas. But a lot more needs to be done. And when you talk about strict decisions, sir, people are not perhaps ready for that. We have been joined in by Zishan Merchant Sahab, former president, KTBA, senior economist as well. Sir, Assalamu alaikum, Zishan Sahab. Mr. Zishan Merchant, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you, but there is a distortion in the line very much.
Am I clear now?
Yes, you are, very much so.
All right. Now, Zishan Sahab, first of all, sir, a couple of decisions. We were just having a word about the ongoing IMF issue, and Miftah Sahab says that, it's a matter of days, everything is going to be sorted out. He's very optimistic, very positive. Now the point is that since Karachi is the financial and economic hub of Pakistan, sir, how are people taking this when the government says that, shops would be closed at 9 o'clock, restaurants would remain open till 11, because that's when you actually enter a restaurant in Karachi. Karachi has a very different lifestyle. Tell us about the overall mood of the public, and especially with the people who are into trading and otherwise, people like you for that matter, who are into business. You are an expert on taxation as well. Now, tell us about the general perception of the people of Karachi, because I think they lead in this particular area, sir.
So the only entertainment available for Karachiites is restaurants. So when they, after the entire days of hard work, if they want to go out anywhere, restaurants is the only thing that they can go to. And to close the restaurant at that time, I mean, Karachi is, as we say that Karachi never sleeps. So the entire, the demographic of Karachi, if you are going to ask me, is that if the shops are going to close at 9, these shops barely open after 1 p.m. So the challenge is that if you're going to close them at 9, there would be hardly any business conducted by all these people, because in Karachi, the environment is that you start your work at 1, you go for Zohar prayers, then you come back, then you have your food, and then you start your retail businesses. To close these retail businesses at 9, they would not accept it. But in the interest of the country, yes, we should do this, and we should start the business early. As it's also mentioned in the Holy Quran that we should, after the Fajr prayers, we should go out and seek for the business and to do business.
So that's an ideal case scenario, but you just can't force yourself to do things. I mean, there's a cultural perspective, and then there is a behavioral perspective also. that doesn't change overnight.
That's correct. So there, and another thing which is very famous for, I mean, Pakistanis, I would say that हम डंडे से चलते हैं, हम वैसे प्यार से नहीं चलते. So we have to change our thinking process. We'll have to change our psychology. We'll have to change the way we have lived so far in order to come out of all these crises. We'll have to pitch in and we'll have to do our bit. Yes, the mood in Karachi and the mood in businesses at the moment is that there is a lot of uncertainty. Unless and until we do not get the approval of IMF, the businesses are going to lay low. They're not going to start their wheel, and everybody is now trying to reinvent the wheel basically. And the prices that we are now thinking that they're going to go up because of the commodity super cycle. Nothing is certain at this point of time. And everything, like Dr. Khaqan Sahab said, that the international commodity prices are going to hit us hard. And that's where the outflow of the dollars would kick in. And obviously, to correct these situations, yes, we need approval of IMF so that the international donors, including Saudi Arabia, including UAE, and for that matter, China, they also join the bandwagon, and then we have certain amount of dollars to then repay the loans which are due in the next financial year. So yes, the mood is low at this point of time in Karachi. However, it all depends upon the success of the talks with IMF, and the sooner they happen, the better it is for Pakistan, so that we can start the new day with the zeal and the vigor that we need to come out of these challenges. And Pakistan is such a resilient country that yes, if we are put on the right track, we outperform ourselves and we surprise ourselves also. So I have no doubt in my mind that once we are on the track and on the track of recovery, we are surely, positively, and inshallah, hopefully we are going to come out of all these challenges. We have also faced these challenges in 1998 when we had done the nuclear explosion. So the times, if I were to compare, these times are somewhat the similar times, although there were sanctions then. But now we are afraid to buy from the people who will impose sanctions on us. So yes, the situation is dicey, the situation is challenging, the situation is difficult, but we all as Pakistanis will need to play our part, and we will have to come to our means and ways to help our country. There's no other view in my mind.
All right, sir, that's a very, very interesting statement. Now, Khaqan Saab, again, I'll refer to him if that's Ismail Saab, and he said that, there are issues and they'll be sorted out, but he said that some major adjustments were also being made in the fiscal framework and, regarding the budget. And now, the most important factor is the surge as far as we see in the rupee-dollar parity. And now, dollar isn't available. Most likely, most people, either they have it like what we witnessed in Argentina, for that matter, that people literally had money under their pillows, under their beds, rather than putting it in the lockers or in the banks, because they were not very certain. That uncertainty, unfortunately, prevailed to that level. Even in Pakistan right now, so if you talk to anybody, those people who do pay taxes, but people are scared now. People are scared because they do not know what's going to happen tomorrow. Because everything is getting affected. The other day I was listening to another very interesting article, an audio. So they said that the inflation in Pakistan is not what the government is saying at 14%. It's much, much, much higher. And the kind of numbers they were giving, 44%, sir, that's something, to ponder upon. Now, purchasing power has been reduced to a certain level, sir. When you talk about the savings, you go to any bank and you'll see what's going on. Look at the interest rate at the moment, sir, 13.75%, which is going to go further up because the inflation is pretty much out of control, sir. So now, looking at this kind of a condition, sir, where at the end of the day, every single government says that they will give relief to their people. Sir, if this is what relief is, honestly speaking, nobody would like to have this kind of relief.
So Faisal, all pertinent questions, and what you were mentioning that people have taken and put dollars in these countries under their mattress. You know, there's an interesting figure which keeps missing in Pakistan. About 12, 13 months ago, the commercial banks held about $7 billion of people's money. Now they hold 5.9 billion. So people have withdrawn from the banks in Pakistan as well. The fear factor that you've talked about. So here,
so this means, Khaqan sir, please, if you allow me. So if $1.1 billion have been taken out of the commercial banks, and whether through the legal transactions or through hundi hawala, because you know, whatever we say, sir, you can't put a check on hundi and hawala, sir, because it's still going on.
Sure.
So if that money has been sent abroad to buy a property or for any other reason, sir, then that's a minus 1.1 again.
So correct, Faisal. So just to answer that, this is a figure which keeps missing because we keep talking about the state bank reserve. So your second question is also very pertinent. Here, I think the role of the policymaker becomes paramount. What do I mean when I say this? You know, Pakistan or any other country in the world is now looking for soft landing. Is our ability there to get a soft landing of Pakistan, and that's the calibration of the policies you need to do. And what do I mean by that? So let me be, you know, very upfront on that. Doing IMF is a no-brainer. I have always said that, and I have supported government in whatever they need to do in the kind of adjustments. I was the first one who came on TV and kept on saying that pass through the petroleum prices, don't create distortion in something that you don't own or you don't produce in the country. So you know, but there is much more to that, right? So what do I mean by calibrating a soft landing? I mean, don't hurt the people who cannot pay, but hurt the people who have never paid. The policy emissions that you have done, let's rectify. Today is the time, and that's why I wrote a budget called the corrective budget of Pakistan. And what does one mean here? You know, there is a vast set of data that is lying with us of all the families that need to be helped. So let's get to them and help them. Is 2,000 enough? Is 4,000 enough? That we can negotiate. But when I see the budget, I don't think it had the requisite amounts. Now I think the fund would have looked at it and put the requisite amount so that 2,000 to 4,000 goes in new financing to these people, in new aid. When I use the word financing, because I don't want to use the word helping hand, this is the kind of money that we should be giving. This is social security, and it should go. Secondly, can we really calibrate the budget which protects our imports? You know, the high rising imports and brings down the CAD, the current account deficit. So can we, you know, do the right taxation? Can we curb expenditures on non-essentials? Can we do pension reforms? Can we do all this? So here's the calibration impact of astute policymaker that would come into place. If we don't, we will have a harder landing. The harder the landing, the harder the adjustments on the people. So here we can't put people like me off the hook and say that, you know, you've got to get your policy calibration right. Now there are other things that are happening. So we have the petrol adjustment that has happened. Now there is an agreement with the fund that we are going to levy a petroleum development levy, what we call, and GIDC. Now, you know, if I was to go to the fund today, sitting in that chair, you know what I would say to them? President Biden came on television and said, I am going to take the gas tax off the table on the 4th of July on the people of the US. If President Biden can go and say that he's going to take the gas tax off on a nation where the per capita income is many times a nation that I'm trying to help in Pakistan, then I should have the ability to put that on the table and say, I will not have a PDL and I will not have a GITC. So, you know, that is, but again, the other side would tell us that, you know, you need to have some taxation, you can't do very well on the direct. So maybe, so, you know, this is the kind of calibration I think that is happening with the fund. And I'm fully confident that the government being so aware, being a political government, so aware of woes of the people is negotiating hard, where 750 billion can be brought to a reasonable figure. Then how hard can we hit the people who have been benefiting without paying taxes? I mean,
Absolutely.
agriculture income tax is subject 20% of your GDP. 20% of your GDP. Let me repeat. Out of the whole GDP is agriculture. The tax paid by the 4 provinces and the federation together is worth 2 to 3 billion rupees. Uh, I am not saying I want to tax your inputs. I am not saying I want to tax your land. I want to tax the income that you create. And that is a phenomena of fair and equitable taxation. I don't want to even tax the CVT that the government's thinking about. You have a piece of land. If you've made your wealth after paying your taxes, but when you sell that land, I am going to tax you on the marginal income tax rate. What do I mean by that? Let's say that I want to sell that piece of land. What we want to do is that you want to make sure that Dr. Khaqan, when he makes that 5 crore rupees in E7 on the plot he has held, is taxed on the 22% marginal rate of income tax that is due from him. So, those are the things.
Sir, people are not ready. Nobody's ever paid that kind of a tax. It's something, you talk to anybody and people are like, what? This is what is happening. I mean, you can't bring in the tax culture immediately. Sir, the moment let me put this question to you, Faheem sir. The moment if we all pay taxes, right? And then there are indirect taxes. And then you buy a card, you pay a certain amount of tax, triple taxation, and then they will charge you further after 3 minutes. I mean, this is the fourth tax that you're paying, this is not acceptable. And I mean, you talk about Scandinavia that they pay about 52%. Sir, look at the way they take care of their people. We are told that every single child who's being born is, he has something around 200,000 rupees as a loan on him, because Pakistan is under tremendous debt. But somebody who's born in Scandinavia, talking about Norway, is worth 6 crore rupees Pakistani. I'll calculate that because I know. Imagine. So when you pay 52%, you get the best education, you get the best treatment, you get the best pension, perfect. They have been enjoying this best living standard for the last God knows how many decades. I mean, this is what we expect, and that's what we get. And you keep squeezing us and keep squeezing us. I mean, people are scared. That is the reason, perhaps, to become filers.
I think we've got so many things that we're taking care of right now that, I mean, Scandinavia is lucky to not face those problems. Very soon they might have to because of what's happening
again, Ukraine.
Anyway, yeah, so I won't get into that. But the bottom line is that I think Dr. Khaqan has pointed out the elephant in the room, or more, he's actually belled the elephant in the room, a big elephant. So there are many people in Pakistan who are not paying tax. And that basically creates a lot of burden on you, on me, on everyone else. And we just have to pull our own weight, so to speak. Yes, I completely understand and agree with what you're saying, that we do have a tax-averse culture, and there are reasons behind it. But we also have to be a little fair. The FBR, for example, has tried very hard to be helpful.
Automation, that's what everybody talks about.
Yeah, and they have, I mean, half of FBR when it comes to customs, they've really simplified things. The people who are involved in international trade, they can vouch for this. When it comes to IRS, which is the other half of FBR, FBR is trying to make things easy. I mean, you have to give them credit. Even the IRS system has started to look a little cute now. It used to look so scary earlier on. The wizard is very cute, so you have to give them some credit. But on a serious note, the point is that there are many people in Pakistan who are not paying tax. And I'll just end my position with one point. If we have actually 1.75 million actual taxpayers, and they're paying around about 5.5 to 6 crore, 5.5 to 6 trillion in tax. Imagine if that number of taxpayers jumps to 3.5 million. What happens?
More money in your kitty, more spending power.
Yeah, and I think we have the ability to do it.
Well, let's see, sir. Last question to you now, coming to you, Merchant Saab. Now, again, talking about the frustration of the average businessman, somebody who runs a restaurant or somebody who has a retail outlet, maybe selling shoes or clothes or something. Now, again, sir, referring to the culture of Karachi, sir, forget about that. even in places like Islamabad, Rawalpindi and Lahore, nobody accepted that. So many governments tried it out. Remember, sir? And then eventually they had to take the decision back. It wasn't being fruitful. You know, we do understand, but because it's a just like we talk about the energy mix. I mean, there's like a dozen different sort of confusions put together, because if you look after one, there is another one being generated. So, I mean, what sort of a, you know, philosophy we need to put in place to move, and which should be realistic, perhaps not being super optimistic, or maybe, you know, when we set targets, they should be attainable, not those targets which are just said that, you know, I can walk to the moon. I cannot, sir.
Point out on Dr. Khaqan's regarding his agriculture income tax theory. So Pakistan is an economy of $292 billion. If we were to say that 20% is agriculture, that comes to $58.4 billion. Multiply by 210 rupees, comes to 12,264 billion. And if we were to tax it at 10% only, we will get 1,226.4 billion in tax if we are to tax the agricultural income at 20%. So, I mean, I don't know. This is just a quick math. But I have always been an advocate of low rate taxation and low rate fixed taxation. I've always given this example that if I am earning 100 rupees and I pay 10 rupee as tax, so the person who is earning 10 rupees should pay 1 rupee tax, and everybody should pay tax at a lower rate, and we should do away with all the withholding taxes, because whenever you have higher rate of taxation, people will not pay tax on their true incomes. Because as you said earlier, that nobody
then the
likes to pay
lawyers
full
will
tax
get involved
for the
and,
reason
you know,
that you don't get health, you don't get education, you don't get infrastructure, you don't get security, and you have to arrange everything in addition to the tax which you pay at 35%. So how do you move forward? The only way you move forward is that you bring down the tax rate to such a level that your smuggling, your under-invoicing does not remain feasible. And all that money which is going through undocumented sector comes into your documented sector, and then perhaps you can collect more revenue. Your economy will start to roll, and nobody will feel the pinch of it, because everybody would know that they have to pay 10% fixed on whatever
like
they earn. And that's the way forward, I guess.
Everybody pays taxes, even abroad, sir, large income group or a smaller income group. There has to be a certain amount. That makes a lot of sense. But anyway, so we are running out of time. Thank you very much, Merchant Saab, for your input in the program. Khaqan Saab, it was a pleasure having you, sir. And thank you so much, Faheem Sardar Saab, for your presence as well. And that's all we have for this hour. Inshallah, I'll see you tomorrow. Till then, you take good care. Khuda Hafiz.